Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Colorado Fire College Podcast. My name is Chris Gay, and
I'm Firefighter EMT Eric Scholl.
and today we have the pleasure of having Tommy Lombardo on our show. He's on the call right now via cell, so you're not going to see his image. But Tommy comes to us with about 31 years of fire experience. He's been a paramedic for about 26 years, and he's been educating for the last 13 years. He brings a wealth of knowledge. He's been a public speaker at conferences about mental health. So we thought you'd be a great person to have on the show. Tommy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So when we're talking about mental health, there's obviously a lot of different things that, can affect first responders. And mental health, I'm kind of going to jam in together with post-traumatic stress. They are two different things, but a lot of the treatments are synergetic between the two of them. And, obviously we all see things that you just can't erase from your mind. But some of the things that we have to deal with in mental health is how to sit in the dark and how to get through that. I think the biggest thing is recognizing it. Early recognition helps people hopefully get treatment earlier. But, some of the things that even with recognition, we're always going to have certain triggers that throw us right back to that moment in time. Whether it be a smell, a likeness of a patient, even just a sound similar to the last traumatic event you had. From these triggers, I'm not sure about you guys, but it doesn't take much to bring me straight back to it.
Yeah. For me, it's like when traffic stops abruptly on the highway. It just reminds me, because every time I'd be out, going to a crash on I-70, if it was really bad, traffic backs up before you get there because, it's blocking the whole road. So you have to kind of inch through traffic. So if I'm driving, everything's clear, and all of a sudden it just slows down. I start shaking. It's
I think there's those triggers can be there. I think one thing that kind of just reflects on me is thinking about just flashing lights on the highway. On those middle night calls where you were half conscious to begin with, and those reminders that bring you back, kind of help. It can help trigger that. I think every individual is different, as well as the generation that you were brought up in and how you deal with it. And there's no right or wrong way to deal with it. Everybody has their notion or their thing that works for them, or at least had tried. And I think what you said, Chris, recognizing it early and knowing where to go for help is key to a lot of this.
Mm-hmm. So, with me, some of the triggers, I'll be honest, when I first started having mental health issues, much like Lance Shore mentioned in our last show, I was having unusual anger outbursts. I was losing sleep, and tackling these things. It's not like you're tackling them one element at a time. You kind of have to have a multifaceted approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, what are your thoughts on, different medications that you can use to attack this?
Man, frankly, I had tried with regular depressants, antidepressants, and Zoloft. I tried Celexa first, and that made me paranoid. So, all right, that's not it. Let me try something else. I tried Zoloft, and I was on that for 10 years to the point where I was talking to my therapist. He's like, "What are you even doing on that anymore? That's something that you're supposed to take for a couple of years." And I didn't know any better. The reason I stopped taking it was because I ran out of it. So I went cold turkey on top of that. And I want to say that didn't make anything any easier. But at that point, I thought to myself, if I'm going to tackle any kind of problem I have, I'd like to tackle it naturally and try it without antidepressants. Try it with, believe it or not, a good diet, actually good food that you put into your body is a huge helper. It's nothing I would have believed until I started doing it myself. So that to me was a big thing also, as well as regular exercise, which I don't feel like I get enough, but things like that, trying to do it naturally. And if those don't work, then trying other methods. But it's easier for some than others.
Yeah.
I know one of my struggle is the amount of different medications they gave me. They gave me one for anxiety, one for depression, one to go to sleep, one to wake up, one to stay awake. And at a certain point, I felt sedated to the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But barely able to function.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
the character was not there.
Yeah, exactly. I did antidepressants for a little while, and it takes too long for it to start working. Like when you need it most to be working, takes too long because it's like what 4 to 6 weeks or something that you have to take it consistently before it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just it just wasn't. I didn't like that. So, but fortunately, like through just therapy and stuff and talking and ways to kind of address those triggers, that helped me a lot at least.
What are your thoughts on
I
therapy?
think therapy is the number one thing that I think would help. I had been going to it for a long time, and it got to the point where the therapist was asking me, like, "Hey, it's great that you're coming here, but what are we doing?" And I'm like, "Oh God, I don't know." But by the time I leave, I just feel better about it. And so it's a matter of talking, whatever that is. We talk about everything from punk music to bad calls at the fire department, anything that's on my mind. And God forbid he's nothing more than just a really expensive friend. But whatever it is, you just just talk about it. Just talking about it is the biggest. It can be your biggest ally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Hands down, I think so.
And I honestly would say therapy is probably the most conventional way. But what about unconventional? I mean, I did the light box, I want to say 3 years ago, and I think you've talked to other people who have experience with the EDM.
The EDMR.
Yes, EDMR.
Yeah. And, I'd be interested in it myself. Frankly, I don't think I have anything I need to, recall and retract. And it's to my understanding that it uses light, or this, I think they call it bilateral stimulation, to allow you to recall memory and relive and reprocess those moments. I'm not sure how that works, but the person who I had talked to that had done it, he's really into that kind of stuff, and he's in his therapy groups, and he found himself in some pretty bad spots where things just haunt him, to where he felt like he had no choice but to tackle it head on. And that's some of the stuff that he does, is that EDMR, and I don't know, it sounds pretty effective, as well as just like ketamine. You're not hearing too many people say that ketamine is such a horrible thing. I didn't think I was for it. I never tried it, but I didn't think I was for it until I just keep reading enough information of, holy hell, that really did me some good. Can that many people be wrong?
And see, when we're talking about ketamine, we're talking about microdosing ketamine. Where if we're looking at psilocybin, we're doing the exact opposite and macrodosing it to have a brain reset. So it's kind of
how they use ketamine in this.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting on how the two polar opposites, but they're both reporting great success right now, which gives me a lot of hope for the mental health community. I mean, seeing ketamine inhalers makes it super easy for people to transport and have readily available when needed. It's making the ease of access.
The problem is people are abusing that. I mean, people are abusing that in a huge way. And, the small number of people that need it versus the small number of people that have it right now is just
lopsided.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, very lopsided, because, the other half of my, job working as a paramedic, I work at a lot of the concert venues, and we see people coming in with these overdoses, these ketamine and K-hole and stuff like that. And there's a fine line on top of the drinking and everything else that they're doing,
I agree with that, but I think part of that's the difference between street ketamine and medical grade ketamine. The biggest hindrance I see, though, is cost. Street grade ketamine's a lot cheaper than medical grade ketamine, and it makes it cost prohibitive for a lot of people to seek treatment that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But one of the biggest things I remember about the EDMR therapy when I did it is that, like, my body was physically exhausted after it, but it could pinpoint where I was holding the stress. Like, my shoulders were literally sore, but that's where I held all the stress because it was always tense.
Yeah.
So odd side effect, but they say that that's a sign that it worked.
Wow.
Yeah, at least you're finding out where your issues are at. What?
Yeah, so then you can take more of a holistic approach if you want to.
And like massage.
Yeah, and everybody's different. Like I said, it's a matter of picking your poison. I think maybe my problems were never bad enough to where I never considered ketamine, or maybe I felt like, what, I'm a grown ass man in my 50s. I feel like I shouldn't have to rely on medications or anything else. Let me try therapy. It just happens to be working for me. I don't know if it's a generational thing or what, but I feel like in the 90s, when something really bad happened, it was suck it up. You're a paramedic. That's what you deal with. And so you just kind of kept your mouth shut and you assumed that was normal. And PTSD, I feel, wasn't what it is now. And it's people getting that voice out and saying, hey, these are the feelings that I'm having. You just didn't say them out loud, I feel like, in the 90s, because you were considered to be weak if you did.
What do you think was the biggest catalyst to changing that?
That machismo, like masculinity, that, like tough firemen. These are the same people, this is when you used to go into overhaul and like pull down ceilings, and we were taught to have cigarettes in our mouth because that was the cool thing. Now, God forbid, you can't even step into a house that had a fire in it without being full SCBA, which is a good thing. But meanwhile, we were taught then that was the cool thing to do, like be in a house with soot on your face and having all the black stuff on you. And boy, have we done a 180. And the same thing goes with talking about it. Before, it was you didn't talk about your feelings because that was like the manliness of it now. And now it's like, no, that's exactly what we do. Because when you don't talk about them, that's when people start offing themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I've recently come to think that compartmentalizing is causing post-traumatic stress. That we're storing those memories to not deal with them at the time of impact.
I can agree with that.
Yeah, so that delayed stress reaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just exactly put it in the filing cabinet. So that's, if we can change a culture in that in the fire service, I think that might have a ripple effect of good.
Yeah. Because, it's like sometimes it's not one specific thing that causes it, and it's all the things that are causing it, the contributing factors. It happens over however long, maybe months or years or whatever, but then it all comes back at once, and that's kind of when you start to have the actual PTSD symptoms, but it's not always just one cause, and that makes it really hard to figure out what is the cause or what you have, because there's nothing specific that you can pinpoint it to.
Agreed. Tommy, with you working with younger kids, especially high school and early college kids, what's the best advice you could give them with how to handle these things that they're dealing with?
That's a great question. One of my students made and framed this saying "not my problem," and I have it on the wall. And as cold as that is, it's really helped me deal with a lot of stuff, because in the heat of the moment, you don't think about it; you just work and you do, right? And afterwards is where you have the problem. And I always try to keep it, at least tell them, no matter what happens, God, I know this guy's dying in front of me, but at least it's not me. And I know, as cold as that sounds, if I don't do anything, then he's going to die. And I don't want that on me. It would cause me more PTSD and more issues if I did nothing about it. And training them how to step up into the action when nobody else will, because they're frozen. That's what makes you a good first responder, whether you're an EMR, an EMT paramedic, anything. We're literally there to help, and that's what you're signing up for. And if you understand the feelings that come along with what you're signing up for early in the game, it's not such a surprise later when that happens. We have a guy at the fire department that I volunteer at. One of my old students is a full-time member there. And
how cool is that?
Watching him, it's great. But watching him go from, this kid who, like, the first time you messed up, the chief yelled at you, and you're about to lose it right there, to you're becoming a grown man, and you're starting to see the things that happen out in street medicine, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And watching him grow, watching him mature at his age is great. I think doing that early sets yourself up to a nice long career if you can continue to do it healthily.
Mm-hmm.
So,
definitely agree with that. It's kind of like what I was saying in the previous video about preparing people early on for what it's really like,
Yeah, and I think to a certain degree you can do that, but there's some things you can't put to work.
Yeah, you can't simulate it fully, but just getting in their head,
And the closest you can come is and I try to make it as realistic as possible. But when we act out our patient stuff, anything from a behavioral patient, but to a chest pain patient, having them act them out. And the better job you do acting, you're helping others like learn how to do this. The fact that they get to do these clinical rotations and like, for example, we got to work at Decadence, 25,000 people, and they had a lot of people that were, like overdosing on a lot of different things. They tried something new and called it was called the Zendo Project, in which they had professionals there that were willing to take on one-on-one these folks who were having these experiences from either too much whatever drug they were on, and the goal of it was to keep people from going to the emergency room because they're just sat on the emergency room there before sobering up and then being thrown out. This kind of avoids a lot of that.
Is that
seemed like it was a pretty
trip sitting?
So yeah, shaman.
yeah, basically it's what it was. So it was something they were trying out with it to see if it would make any changes, and perhaps it was a positive thing. They're still working out the different kinks and really experimenting with the idea of it. But a lot of those people just didn't need Versed and taken to the hospital and strapped down.
Yeah.
That's not going to help them. They need their own personal attention. But if they had the resources to be able to do it, then great. But I found it to be helpful. I think obviously, surely, the people who were caught in that whole scenario were grateful for them to have that done as opposed to be taken to the hospital.
Yeah.
Then that's, a decent exposure for your students.
Oh, man. One of them, it really hit close to home because, she's looking for some help after that. And I tell people, I'm just joking with them, but I'm like, do you see what you guys look like when you drink too much? When you take, and a lot of them, this is the first time they've ever truly seen a sick person. And some people having those bad acid trips where, if they did have any kind of trauma in their past, it's being brought up. And you see the fear in their faces. Those are the kind of people that need medicated and taken to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, where do you see the progression of mental health going forward? I mean, where do you think the next big avenue is going to be in?
I don't know. That's really tough. I feel like even as a teacher, I teach seniors only. These are people that are about to be thrown out into the world. And I think as much as I didn't want to admit it maybe 10 years ago, I'm all for now sharing your feelings, talking to your teacher. You didn't talk to your teacher when you were in high school. Now they really build those relationships up, and we do what we can to prepare people for the real world that's out there. And there's no getting ready for PTSD. There's no getting ready for this bad call, because however you think it's going to you dream it to go down, it's likely going to change. And it's hard to say how it's going to affect you. It could be something as simple as you heard somebody's screams, like in terror, and that's going to bother you. Or again, like the flashing lights or the smells of a bad car accident. It's hard to say if anything at all will ever trigger you or anyone. Knock on wood, so far, I feel like I don't have anything that was that horrible that I couldn't get over. But I also had grown up in an age where we were taught, suck it up. That's what you deal with, bro. Everyone dies.
Mm-hmm.
Get over it. I'm like, oh, okay. And now I kind of feel like that, but I don't want that to sound cold.
Yeah.
I don't think it necessarily sounds cold as it sounds honest.
Yeah. Honest and
that it is.
And it's just
you tell a 17-year-old that? I hope so, because that's real life.
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone makes it. We all, no one escapes.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. We look for a longer life. We look for a positive life, and I feel like this is something that can be dealt with if you know how to manage your own mental health. And having those people to talk to, oh man, and that's really hard when you're this single guy or whatever. You don't have kids or something like that. All right, well, you grow up in this global world. Who do you have to share with? Boy, that's a dangerous world to potentially live in. Mm-hmm. Who do we have to talk to as 40, 50-year-old single men? But
I feel like the pool definitely shrinks the older you get.
Yeah. But even talking with you guys, talking with, especially, and I've told my students this, talking with them, believe it or not, that's therapy for me.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
opening up your mouth and talking to someone, find some friends, find a hobby, do something, but don't dwell on any one thing at all, especially if it's bothering you.
Mhm.
And I hope there's supervisors out there that know to keep an eye on their guys when they've had a relatively rough call and they follow up with them. Because that feels really good when your lieutenant, your officer, your chief, somebody says, hey, man, that was a pretty messed up call. You all right after that? Yeah, you know, that helps me. I don't know. I would imagine you guys feel the same way. I can't imagine I'm the only one that feels like that.
No, I mean, in my experience, like for me, one of the calls that really sticks with me, I had, right after that, I had the chief of that department and the assistant chief call me just to see how I was doing, like the day after that. And that actually helped a lot, I think, just to know.
Having that personal touch.
Yeah, knowing that someone cares.
Yeah. Because I've also been at agencies where they didn't check in after that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't say that for me at least, that it was bothersome or that I was like, oh, and I noticed it, but I definitely noticed when they did reach out, and it was very helpful. So,
Sure. And it's probably in a hard spot. Like you get into these big metropolitan cities where, especially right now, could you imagine being an EMS in like, you know, Minneapolis or where all this, like people are just full of hatred and anger and want to hurt somebody, want to blame somebody. And they, this like all of that is got to be trying on somebody after a long time. A lot of that burnout and cumulative stress.
Yeah, I think that hits every level. I mean, from a command standpoint of view, you're going to lose ranks and files with people leave because they're fed up with it.
Mhm.
You know, at the front line level, you're having a constant turnover. Have to continuously train new people. I mean, it's a vicious cycle at that point.
Mhm.
And I hope that those massively affected cities are able to recover, but I see it being a rough road for them.
Yeah. I mean,
and you have to want to help people, and you have to
Yeah.
want to be an EMS. Nobody
the
got into money. You know, you learn real early in the game that you're never going to be rich doing this. And some people, especially in high school, use it as a stepping stone. Cool. I was an EMT while I was in high school. Maybe I got to go do something else when I get older. There's a small handful of them that choose to stay in EMS, and I could probably name a dozen of them that are paramedics now, and one's a doctor, and that's good that they stay in it. I'm sure they have the same thoughts and feelings that we do too, having spent some time in the business now themselves.
Mhm.
And I almost kind of wish that they were on this call too. In fact, I should follow up with them and ask what their thoughts are now that they've spent some time in this world. How is it any different than it was growing up in the 90s or 2000s or even the 2010s?
Yeah.
You know, and the more I think about that, the more I say things have drastically changed but stayed the exact same.
Yeah.
You know, the cultures have somewhat changed. Some of the medicine's changed, but a lot of things are still the exact same framework.
Yeah, and the human emotion is the same.
Mhm.
But I think we're just treating it a little different. And, you know, like you said, the whole alternative medicines to get there. Some people can't do it on their own, just can't. And, you know, maybe therapy is good for one person. It's not good for another. One thing I did notice about the therapy thing is it took 15 years of this for finally stuff to come out. Like, hey, you don't talk about your feelings. I'm literally just finding this stuff out now. Now let's talk about my feelings. Like, into it. You know what I mean? Like, that's not right. But at least it's something, and I'm getting somewhere.
Mhm.
You know, for other people, it might, you know, be medication. God, I guess it depends on how bad you're hit with it, how bad you're hit with the signs and symptoms.
Mhm.
Well, and I think the severity too. You know, I know there's some people who live with a high level anxiety to start with before they get in the industry,
Yeah.
and whether they medicate for it or
Yes.
or treat it or not.
Mhm.
But then to compound, you know, everything we see on top of that, it's kind of, again, like a multifaceted problem.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel like the people that often get into this field of work are people who are high strung and high anxiety and need to use their hands and need to work fast, think fast, and want to be critical thinkers. And it's kind of cool to be a hero. You know, that helps too. But meanwhile, you put all those together, and that's kind of like almost the signs and symptoms for a lot of PTSD stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So did you come into the business with PTSD already and have it? And if it's not bothering you, do you bother even addressing it? Or do you just call that, quote, anxiety?
And I think that's what allows it to get so bad is just the fact that it can start out as emotions that you're familiar with, like anxiety or whatever it might be. But then by the time it does change and get worse, it's already been going on for a while. But I think just that slight familiarity is what really can allow it to grow and into something worse and more severe and not notice it right away, which,
Yeah.
you know, it's just kind of one of those things, unfortunately. But
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say about anxiety, like who doesn't have anxiety?
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question is, how do you relate your anxiety to PTSD? And is there a relation between those two?
Yeah. I mean, that probably also depends on the person, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I definitely think, talking about it's having an impact. I think the availability of more mental health resources is having impact, making it easier to access crisis lines,
Mm-hmm.
but I think all these efforts will be futile if we don't figure a way to fund these efforts much better.
Yeah.
That is a whole nother story.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. I feel like there's a text line out there now. It's like 988
Yep, you're right.
pound time. Oh, nice. I heard about it one time, and I just for the hell of it, I texted her. I'm like, hey, and my message was something like, "You guys do some great work. Thank you so much." Like, do you need help? I'm like, no, I don't need help. I just want to tell you guys that you're doing good. Probably, that's probably a nice thing. But meanwhile, I tried it. It works. It's cool.
Yeah,
But that's
a nationwide resource.
Yeah.
How does that get funded to begin with?
I have to imagine philanthropy.
Yeah. I don't know. I have no idea.
So, and one of the things I hope is that no matter what administration's in office, don't care who it is, that they don't cut funding to some of these programs that are actually making a difference.
Yeah. I mean, especially as new as it really is. Because, I mean, first of all, EMS is like a pretty new career, like a new job. Like when you consider, I mean, what is it, like the 60s or even like the 50s that we started having like actual like EMS sort of like
Response.
yeah, more than just like
I want to say it was like around the 70s.
Yeah.
When it truly got organized, when you put the National Registry into play. But yeah, you're right. That's only 50 years.
Yeah, it's a pretty new profession. Yeah. So, I mean, that means that these things are even newer. So they're just getting started. So we don't want to lose them already,
Yeah.
I've had the honor of working with a couple of guys that came back from the Vietnam War and worked as medics out there and just found themselves on the fire department and and had their career there. And, they were old guys by the time that I got there. But even having to learn from them and just hearing their stories and how they dealt with all the stuff is pretty interesting. Yeah. Dog not, oh, dog's again. But yeah, it was interesting listening to their stories and whatnot. And man, you even think about people who were in World War II, people that were in any war, and the kind of crazy, wild stuff that they see. That's huge compared to what we see in EMS. Yeah, we might see gunshot wounds, we might see some sad stories and hear some bad things and stuff like that. But I mean, to each their own. But I don't know. I feel like I got into that job because I could take that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And if I couldn't, then I would get out of it. If I weren't happy doing this job, I'd go find something else to do. That's key. Is that what's causing your PTSD? Is your job? Because if so, you should probably find another job. Health's more important.
Yeah, if it's the environment, change the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which probably touches on a whole nother subject of salty, burnt out firefighter paramedics.
Right?
What I would say to that, what about those people that like this is their life? Like they thought they always wanted to do it and then they get into it and some things happen and they're like, maybe this isn't so great, but they just feel like that is who they are. So they almost feel stuck. Like, for them, that's kind of a more tricky thing to just walk away from,
Yeah, embodied in
it would be trickier to walk away from if you made a lot of money doing this stuff.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, like,
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. My personal calling to, I don't know. The only reason I became a paramedic was to get on the fire department. Yeah, I mean, that was it. And then all of a sudden I realized, wow, I really like medicine. And there are some pros and cons to it that come with it, but I wouldn't change it for anything. And sure, yeah, I like, teaching the kids, but I don't want to get out of EMS. I like medicine. I like that challenge.
Yeah. And definitely.
You have to want to do it. So, and there are pros and cons to it. And I guess some of the cons might be the potential of you coming down with PTSD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and they talk about that in school, but I don't think they go into it nearly as in depth as they should. Like it's usually like one lecture or something that's like an hour.
It is. It's one lecture. It's one chapter. Some call it the combat veteran, and just talk about this, speak on that, because that's a good portion of our folks too.
Mm-hmm.
Patients and learning how to talk to these people. That's part of the problem. Is us animals and fire and EMS, we don't know how to communicate with people that well. It's a special, skilled person to be able to get on a level of someone who is either that out of their mind or having that hard of a time with their issues, to be able to connect with them and build that rapport.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, women are better at that than men.
Truth.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah. I wouldn't consider myself to be very good at all that. Like I understand the medical stuff really well and how that all works, but then like the second someone starts crying in front of me or something, I just kind of like pat them on the shoulder and be like, "They're there."
Here's a 4x4.
I feel really uncomfortable.
I'm gonna stand outside the ambulance.
Yeah, I was just like, "Oh man."
yeah,
I'm not ready for this.
come on. I mean, do we have the right kind of empathy with somebody? And we're like, let's go. I mean, you're just one more that needs to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
Again, goes back to that. Are you burnt out? Is this for you?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's some patients I find myself like, wow, like, did I make a difference? And if I did, that makes me feel good. And there's other patients where I'm like, did I not give them the proper care that I would normally give somebody else?
Mm-hmm.
And if you're being watched by your partner, if you're being watched by like one of your students, by a ride along, by someone like that, even by the patient when they're conscious enough, everyone should be watching it, and you should be watching everybody else to make sure and ensure that they are getting good patient care and they are getting that good empathy that we probably should be giving it to people in EMS that I bet you oftentimes gets missed by those who are burnt out.
Yeah. And I remember at one time when I was starting to feel a little bit of burnout, we were getting called to a drunk person that was literally the only complaint. And I remember I was complaining the whole way there. I was like, oh, great, another drunk person. But we had a third ride with us. And when I looked in the back, I saw them looking forward through the window, and they're all excited and stuff. And it kind of restored some of my love for it, I guess, because I saw to them, they like, it's a call for them. They don't care what it is. They're just excited to be going on a call. So I was like, oh, maybe I was being a little negative and complaining.
Yeah, absolutely. I find myself doing that. I call myself a pretty white cloud. And the kid that I was talking about earlier recently had worked with them. And, as a white cloud, I never get up in the middle of the night. And sure enough, we got up twice because he had said something, and I ripped him up and down. I thought about it, like, this kid likes this stuff. And you know what? I'm the one who taught him how to like this stuff.
Yeah.
So what am I doing yelling about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
A little perspective change.
Now, and that's great. But it's things like that keep that spark, that fire alive in us. Otherwise, what are we doing?
Yeah.
It's really easy to get caught up in a negative note, especially with what's going on in this world today. Mm-hmm. There's a book I was listening to, but it says something along the lines of, in this kind of world today, how are we not depressed? How do we not have anxiety? How do we not take antidepressants in a world like this? That's the question. So, each their own.
Absolutely. And, in some ways, while I'm not a religious person, I know some people turn to religion to deal with these things, depending on which religion.
I do.
I've seen it make people religious, and I've seen it make people not religious.
There's some of that too. I know that's not what this is about, but me personally, that's something I heavily rely on. And, it's hard without proof of anything, but either you believe or you don't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And honestly, if it gives you hope, isn't that what it's tend to do?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
absolutely,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I found myself quite a bit of times praying and still end up on top walking the earth. So I guess maybe it's worked.
I normally don't admit this, but before I go into a burning building, I usually say a prayer. And somebody once called me on and says, Chris, I know you're not religious. Why would you do that? And I literally looked at him square in the eye and said, God, could you imagine if I was wrong this whole time?
Yeah, right.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Actually, that, and even sometimes for the patient too. Like, God, give me the strength to be able to handle whatever patient I'm about to walk in, because it's scary. It's always going to be scary.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you can be very experienced and, and still be nervous about what's going to happen to you or the patient.
Yeah.
Oh,
I agree.
I pray on airplanes because I'm afraid of flying. So whenever I'm up in the sky, the prayers start coming out as we start hitting turbulence. And but yeah,
yeah, it's a staple that I choose to do. And make sure I do it every day, a little bit every day, because you're right. What if I'm wrong? That's a
Right.
long time to spend in hell.
Yeah. And some people look at it, I sometimes think I'm being pigheadish about it, but then I go back to the other side of thing is like, well, God, could I just be the one guy that said no the whole time and just end up in the wrong place because I was pigheadish?
yeah, right.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right, and yeah. So
Well, Tommy, I appreciate you taking the time to call in today and chat with us about mental health and your perspectives on it. If you ever want to come back on the show, you are more than welcome to come back. You can always come down to the
yeah,
studio.
I'd love to come back. Yeah, believe it or not, this is a little bit therapeutic for myself.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
These are the things that we were talking about earlier. Just talking to people and just sharing it helps, right? And I kind of encourage anybody out there, as silly as it may sound, it takes a lot of courage to stand up and if you were a good, receptive person on the other end, you'd thank them for sharing that with you.
Mhm.
So I'm sure you guys understand that. And yeah, I would love to come back. Hopefully someone can pull something positive out of this and they can help them in the future.
That's one thing I figured out from this podcast that we started, since it's been downloaded every nation, is that it is having an impact.
Hmm.
People are listening, people are watching, and I can only imagine good things coming from it. So,
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, good. Great. Well, thank you very much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
absolutely. You have a great day, and everyone be safe out there. See you next time.
See ya.
All right, take care.